1 minute to 9 o'clock. Welcome back. A reminder that from 9 to 10, that hour, of course, of News and Views is brought to you by African Muslims Agency. And also not to forget that our Fired Up series with Hafiz Imran Chunara, personal excellence mentor and CEO of African Muslims Agencies, will play out today at the end of the show. But right now, at exactly 9 o'clock, we cross over to the Western Cape and we are joined by Roscoe Palm. He is the councillor for the Good Party, and he's going to talk to us about a silent but very powerful vigil on Mandela Day. Very good morning to you, Roscoe. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Julie. It's good to be with you.
Likewise, likewise. I presume it's very cold in Cape Town, wet and cold.
Yes, it is, as is the case with winter.
Okay. Talk to us about, obviously, this very, very successful, silent, but a powerful vigil. How did it come about? It happened on Mandela Day. How was the response of the people involved? Tell us about the 67 minutes of a very powerful vigil.
Well, Julie, it was a vigil which was tremendously successful. We were joined, the Good Party decided that we were going to honor Nelson Mandela on Nelson Mandela Day and remember an aspect of Nelson Mandela as the freedom fighter. It was Nelson Mandela who said that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians. So we held a 67-minute silent vigil outside of the South African Holocaust Center in Cape Town. Now, we chose the site for this vigil with deep intent. The Holocaust Center stands as a memorial to one of history's greatest atrocities. And it stands to affirm the global commitment to the promise of never again. But tragically today, history keeps on defying that promise. The world is once again witnessing mass atrocities, displacement, war crimes, and in Gaza, we are witnessing a genocide unfolding that's becoming worse and worse with each passing day. So on Mandela Day, we decided to link those struggles historically, and also to remember that Nelson Mandela, the father of the nation, he was a freedom fighter who was deeply aware of the struggles across the globe that cannot be won in isolation. They have to be won together. That was the intent of the vigil.
And as you say, it was a very it was a huge success. So how many people participated, and what was the mood like? I know it was a silent vigil. However, let's just understand the dynamics that, went on during that 67 minutes, and passers by. What were the comments like? How did the guys feel, the people that were involved in the vigil itself?
Julie, I think we are in a very interesting moment in South Africa where we are one of the few safe harbors in the world where we can, in fact, express solidarity with the Palestinians. So now and then you get somebody driving past with the middle finger, but by and large, just a straw poll of the people driving past, it's like there's massive support for this cause, which stands in stark difference to other so-called democracies, where if you waving a Palestinian flag in some European countries, you go to jail. There are political prisoners in the United States, including those of journalists, which Donald Trump is riding roughshod over the First Amendment and many other constitutional amendments to just to silence critique, to continue the genocide in Palestine. So it's important for us in this safe space to express solidarity with the Palestinians, because there are those of us around the world who simply cannot. There are people being persecuted in Britain for simply singing lyrics on stage. We are very lucky to be living in this constitutional democracy where we can express ourselves, where we can, in fact, um, move the needle quite starkly in favor of our constitutional values of freedom, freedom of expression, enshrinement of our constitutional rights to free expression. So we must exercise those. But I also fear for our sovereignty being chipped away by those who would seek common cause with the genocide dares. We must be careful that we must safeguard these constitutionally protected freedoms, and we must use them for the benefit of people wherever they are who are being oppressed.
Roscoe, as you've indicated, it was very significant that the silent vigil was held outside of the Holocaust Center in Cape Town. And we obviously don't deny that the Holocaust has happened. And yet, in this day and age, in this modern day, in the 21st century, uh, the very descendants of the people that were killed in the Holocaust, uh, part of those have now formed a Zionist movement, and they're perpetrating the very same things that were perpetrated on them back in Germany, or
Mm,
even worse in Palestine. So it's really significant that the silent march was held outside of the Holocaust Center, and it's painful, significant, and painful at the same time. Having said that, hats off to the people in the Western Cape for raising, their voices and their flags in support of the Palestinian people and oppressed people all around the world. However, there is some sort of a dichotomy in the Western Cape. We're hearing about little Israel that is growing by leaps and bounds. How do you
mm.
feel about that? And I keep, I've used this term, the tale of two cities in the Western Cape. And that exactly, according to my understanding, is what's happening there. How do you view that? And the fact that at the same time, there's a huge support by mainly colored and black people in the Western Cape for the Palestinian cause.
I do believe that dichotomy, as you speak about, it is changing. People are linking the politics with the morals of the situation to a greater and greater extent. Um, I do worry that, for example, there are people who are militarily trained in the Israeli forces who are now coming to South Africa. There are people in South Africa who are going to fight in Gaza and on the West Bank to expand the settler colonialist project and to advanced Zionism. I also think we have to distinguish between Jews and Zionists.
Exactly.
We were very lucky to be joined by my sister in the struggle, Megan Goritz, from South African Jews for Free Palestine. Many other people joined us in that process, including in the vigil, including my other sister in the struggle, Shamima Dali Sali. So by forming these partnerships with civil society organizations and with individuals, we can push back against hatred, discrimination, and I think a subversion of our democracy and our sovereignty. I'm very concerned that there is a safe haven here where some people can hide from the law. Let's be honest. If you're going to fight overseas, you need an exception from the NCACC. And I wonder how many of these people went to fight overseas to commit this genocide, these mercenaries. How many of them, as national government, tracked? So we're either constitutional democracy or not. We have to abide by the law. We all must be equal before the law, and we've got to make sure that that our constitutional democracy is the primary mover of the politics in this country. So, Julie, I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by the turnout. I'm encouraged by the sentiment towards things like this in the Western Cape. I'm hopeful that people can increasingly link the political, in the sense of that the DA are backed by Zionists, that there are parties backed by Zionists who would be more than happy to see ethnic cleansing and genocide happening in Gaza and the West Bank. And we have to resist this politically. There's a local government election coming up next year. Well, 2026, possibly 2027, early 2027. And it's time now to really make a stand. If we are truly for humanity, if we are truly standing against Netanyahu's war on reason and humanity, it begins with a political choice, and that political choice must be a collective one, to not back the parties who advance Zionism and undermine the sovereignty of South Africa.
I'm glad you made the distinction between Jewish people and Zionists. And in our programs here at Salam Media, we too refer to Zionism and not Jewish people as a whole, because we do know we in South Africa and Palestine and all around the world have decent, humane Jewish people who do say, "Not in my name," and we respect them, and we obviously see them as fellow human beings. Um, you talk about the upcoming elections, you talk about Zionism having possibly infiltrated the DA party. How sure can we be that there are Zionist elements involved there and not perhaps, God-fearing Jewish people? How does one go about making that distinction?
Julie, I think if you take a trip to Israel and you come back and say there's nothing to see here, there's no apartheid, there's no genocide, then I think these parties and these politicians have been co-opted into the Zionist settler colonial project. I was at an event, I think about 2 months ago, with the DA spokesperson, one of the DA spokespeople, and I brought up the issue of these MPs who are going to Israel, and what does that say about the Democratic Alliance's stance in Palestine. And she said a very interesting thing. She said, yes, this is against the DA policy, and yes, they must be disciplined, but I won't hold my breath for that. So it will be, look, I'm not really that interested in watching the DA walk a tightrope, because I'm interested in watching them fall right off that. But it's strange to see how uh, they somehow seem to hold these two completely contradictory ideas inside of the way they do things. So they either for constitutional democracy or they are for a settler colonial project. And linking that back to Nelson Mandela, it's important to see that there are stark parallels between the two cases: South Africa in apartheid under colonialism, and the Gaza and the West Bank right now. Um, so I don't think that the Democratic Alliance are really good faith actors when they say that they are that they are uh, for humanity. Let's be frank. They mask a Zionist agenda until the day that those DA MPs who went overseas, who went to Palestine, until they're disciplined according to the Democratic Alliance's code of conduct or policies, then I don't believe a thing that Helen Zeller or Jordan Neal Lewis or anyone from the DA's lying lips utter.
There are other such entities within other parties as well here in South Africa. I mean, I had so much of hope for Gayton McKenzie in the early years when he was breaking into politics, and I thought to myself, here's an ex-convict, clearly because he's had a hard life. His circumstances were very, very unfavorable. He was discriminated, and his forefathers were discriminated against all their lives. probably brought up dirt poor. That's why he landed up in jail, having made all of the wrong choices. And here he comes back and he enters politics. And I had high hopes for someone like him. And look what, just how he has turned around. He too had a massive freebie to Palestine, I think just pre the genocide, and a whole lot of other young black and colored hopefuls that are wanting to get into politics, coming back and saying that there's no evidence of apartheid in Israel, and one wonders what part of the world, what was shielding their eyes, what was being whispered in their ears, that they could come back to South Africa and make such um, horrible, ridiculous statements. And here we're sitting here, in South Africa, knowing the true. We're seeing the genocide unfold right in front of our eyes, and people can make statements such as those.
Look, I can't speak for other political parties and other individuals, but we know how we know how Israel operates. We know their influencing operations. We know how deep their pockets are. You only need to look at how well funded the Israeli or the Zionist lobby, or Israeli Zionist lobby, is in the United States, where they can give all of these politicians millions of dollars. And you only have to see the institutional pushback that candidates like Zoran Mamdani and Rashida Tlaib and Ilan Omar face in their own country, of which they are public representatives. They are treated as second-class citizens who shouldn't really be there. So I'm worried about the pernicious influence of Zionists inside of our polity, and you can see that finding expression in various parties. So if you're voting for the DA, you're voting for Zionist party. If you're voting the PA, you're voting for Zionist party. If you're voting for all of these other parties who have links to these funders and these programs, even parties that are maybe equivocal about their stance on Palestine, it's all about knowing what the power of your vote is, the consent that you give these political parties to operate, the consent that you give these political parties to push forward these ideas within the polity. A firm rebuke of political parties who are I would say lukewarm about the genocide, or even in some cases completely supporting the genocide. We have to now realize we had a turnout of, I think, about just under 50% last election. If more people turn out and express their that this struggle in Gaza and the West Bank is the great moral struggle of our time, and express that on their ballot box, on their ballot sheet, we can, in fact, change the entire polity. We can create a permission structure where we have more authority, more of a mandate to make sure that we push through the anti-apartheid in Israel, to make sure that we enforce the conditions of the NCACC, to ensure that we do, in fact, prosecute people who are guilty of mercenary activities, of a genocide in Gaza and the West Bank and in Africa and wherever it may be. South African citizens cannot be part of this. That's not what Mandela and all of the struggle icons of years gone by fought for.
What about those people, the naysayers, that suggest that there's a lot of corruption in our politics as well, and we should concentrate in fixing South Africa and those political parties and not worry about what's happening in other parts of the world? As a politician yourself, how would you respond to something like that?
Well, I think that the genocide in Gaza is it is so brutal. It is so cold, and it is so calculated that it's impossible to ignore it. I think yesterday Pope Leo condemned the bombing of the last Catholic church in Gaza as barbaric. Um, this front organization called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is basically setting up these kill boxes where they encourage people to get aid, and all they get is bullets. Um, it is true that there are places in South Africa that are even worse than Gaza, and apartheid was very, very, very bad. We emerged from that, but Khayelitsha wasn't carpet bombed on a daily basis. The scale of the atrocities, it's comparable to, and even worse than, some of the worst war crimes and genocides that we've ever seen. Now, as South Africans, we face massive problems, massive problems. 30 years into our democracy, we still have a political economy that's no different, in fact, in many cases, to the political economy of South African, of apartheid South Africa. The only difference now is that we maybe have a few black and colored and Indian billionaires sitting at the top table with the established legacy capital billionaires. Black economic empowerment, for example, it doesn't work for the ordinary black person who is living in a shack, struggling to survive, spending most of their money trying to get into the city to look for employment or to perform menial employment. Our problems are structural, and we have to collectively work on that. In the case of Gaza, the problem is Zionism. The problem is genocide, which I think is a lot different. But it's important to link those struggles. It's important to link those moral struggles, because if you want to act on a global scale for the entire ordinary working class, you have to be aware of these struggles wherever they happen in the world, wherever they have happened in history. And for me, that's that's incredibly important to build bridges to the past, to the future, and to build solidarity among a cohort of people who are intent on changing the politics of today and the future going forward.
Well, I can safely say that I would vote Roscoe Palm for president of South Africa.
No, I
Very
don't
well
want
said,
to happen to me.
Roscoe.
I don't want to wake up every morning and worry about what trouble am I in today. I'm happy where I am. Thank you.
Oh, good for you. Let's wrap up. We've had lots of response to this interview on Facebook, so maybe you want to go and scroll those comments a little later on. But for now, let me. I brought it up a little early on, but I just want to know what is the thoughts of the people on the ground in the Western Cape regarding the influx of. I'm not sure. Do I refer to them as Jewish people or Zionism in the upper income areas in the Western Cape, which has in fact had quite a significant impact on property prices in the Western Cape. And I kind of wonder, are we going to reach a stage where property is going to become totally unaffordable for the layperson in the Western Cape?
Absolutely. That is a problem that we are very cognizant of. The Good Party, along with a lot of progressive parties, we are fighting for spatial justice, particularly with land in the inner city. It has to be made available to those who were kicked out. The city of Cape Town has a massive problem with this housing waiting list. You don't know whether getting the people are getting houses on the waiting list who were there for 20 years. Other people are, we're not sure where we are on the queue. There are issues in Salt River and Woodstock where gentrification is leading to higher property prices. As far as people coming into Cape Town, let's say Jewish people, Zionists, of course they are free. This is their country. We're not going to exclude people because we're not racists. Racist people would like to think of immigrants that we're trying to control as being from the Eastern Cape, for example. but the Eastern Cape is part of South Africa. Now I can't go around and check people to say like, look, are you Jewish or are you Zionist? Of course, that would be. But however, there is the city of Cape Town, and Jordan Neil Lewis has gone on these junkets to Johannesburg, organized by Jewish organizations to encourage um, migration from Johannesburg to Cape Town. So why isn't he going to Umtata to encourage that same kind of immigration from the Eastern Cape to Cape Town? Um, it's a very complicated issue, but we are in Cape Town. We do face this massive problem now, where the you can see the local spatial development frameworks. They are not. They are going to change the character of certain neighborhoods and communities to the extent that historically it's almost like a kind of a program of um, uh, creating an amnesia about who we are, where we're from, the character of certain neighborhoods are being whittled down, and then forgotten altogether. These developments become part of the landscape of South Africa. The older, the indigent, the poorer people are being forced to the outskirts of the city. We can see it happening. Instead of it being happening by the apartheid government and the Group Areas Act, now it's happening under the auspices of a elected municipal government. And that's part of my role and part of the role of the Good Party and all those who stand against this kind of thing, who have a pro-poor agenda, to at every step along the way look at these documents and look at the items on the council agenda, much of which concerns property, in fact. There are 251 councillors. Most of us now, because of the nature of the property transfers, we deal in municipal property transfers to private hands effectively. So it's a long fight, Julie, and hopefully it's one that we can win with a group of people who are committed, hardened, and are ready for the difficult fights. It's going to be a very difficult fight, and it's going to take us about 15 years to
Sure.
fully defeat these elements. And I'd rather be realistic about the task at hand than promise that tomorrow.
Mm.
It's complex, Julie, but we on it.
Roscoe, it's been an absolute a pleasure having you on the show this morning. We started out talking about the peace vigil, the silent but very powerful peace vigil outside of the Holocaust Center in Cape Town, and we started covering politics very widely. But it was a very, very interesting discussion, and it's very encouraging to note that there are lots of hopefully young people like yourself involved in politics and wanting to make a meaningful difference, very especially for the man in the street. Thank you so much. Keep up the great work. God bless you, and we'll touch sides again sometime soon.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you to your listeners at home.
It is exactly 9:27 a.m. This is News and Views moving along, and thank you to all of you, Abdul Razak Ismailov, Abdullah Chabal, and other people who've been posting comments on Facebook. Let's move on then, and I think we will be. We've tried to get hold of Masiha Saluji in Syria. We're having a problem connecting with her, so let's see whom we can talk to right after the ad break.